welcome to, 15 people in the studio audience already. Welcome to yet another Heartbeat tutorial, this time led by Gareth Wilson. I am extremely excited to welcome everybody here. If you're watching live stream on YouTube or LinkedIn, I'm super happy to have you guys tuning in. Any comments you leave beneath the stream will come on into the studio as well. If you are in the Heartbeat live streaming studio, you'll be able to leave a comment in the group chat, or if you want, even raise your hand to call in and ask questions. Gareth's going to be covering an excellent amount of topics on crafting $1 million community offering, the subtitle being How to Price and Package Your Paid Community. Just to make sure we get all of the nuance and context delivered to you guys, we've got a little bit of content up front we're going to deliver from Gareth, and then we're going to batch all your questions in a very meaty Q&A right at the end. That you'll be able to call in during that time if you want, or just drop your questions in the chat as per usual. And yeah, so let's kick off what we are doing here today. In general, this is our new flow for tutorials. We are live, as I said. So while you may not in the studio audience be on camera, you are very much here in our hearts. And so we would like it for you guys to drop constant stream of consciousness in the chat. The more thoughts, the better. We will document and pull out the questions, so fear not, we won't lose them, and I will be able to put them up on screen when we are answering them. And of course, as always, please be respectful. We're all here learning. We come to this lesson from different stages of expertise. And for what might be a beginner question for somebody else is maybe an old trick for you, and that's okay because we all started somewhere, and we're here to learn and get better as community-based business growers. So thank you all for being here. That is the hardest part for showing up and learning. So now let's get into it. Like I said, we're going to have about 30 to 45 minutes of learning, and then we're going to have a nice solid Q&A right at the end. And we have a special promo code as a thank you for everybody attending. If you are not yet a Heartbeat customer, something I want you guys to be aware that we are doing for you. So stick around for that at the end. But now I need to hype up Gareth. Gareth, welcome. Welcome to the Heartbeat tutorial. Thank you so much for being here. I want to share a little bit about you, if I may. So I have a bio, and it's set for you, and it says, so Gareth Wilson is a community consultant and author of the newsletter Community Inc., where he shares deep dives into $1 million paid communities that demystify the business of community. Having been in the community space since the early 2000s, he has spent hundreds of hours studying how paid communities build, monetize, and grow. Gareth works with creators and teams providing strategic advice and hands-on help with community ops, content, onboarding, and growth. If there was ever an eminently qualified speaker for this topic, it would be Gareth. So Gareth, welcome. Welcome to the tutorial. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, man. Great to be here. And,
awesome.
Yeah, appreciate the intro.
Oh, you're very welcome. The best part of what I get to do here is just meet, and I'm taking notes just like everybody else is. Like, this is an excellent opportunity to just learn from folks like you. So the goal here, right? The goal for this session is we want folks to walk away with a clear understanding of the 5 main community types and their traits in terms of pricing and benefits to primary selling points, member requirements, and platforms used. So this is for those just planning a paid community or someone looking to optimize an existing one. Would that be a good, accurate synopsis of who we're teaching? Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So Gareth, if I can, why don't you kick us off? Give us what we can expect today, and then if you want, you can jump right into the lesson content.
Yep, sure thing. Bring up my some slides here.
And I'm opening up the live stream chat here. Appreciate all you guys. We have hello from England, Miami, Kenya, Arkansas, Pennsylvania. Folks, we have in Cabo, Mexico, New York City, Charleston. Excellent. We have folks from all over the world. Wonderful. Barbados. Welcome, everybody.
All right. Hopefully you can see my slides there.
Yes.
But yeah, so going to be covering, as Mike said there, pricing and packaging. So different approaches to establishing an offer for your paid community. It's something that I've been in space kind of working with a bunch of kind of community founders for a while. And over kind of the last couple of years in particular, people have been reaching out, asking questions about like how to structure their community offering, how to price it, what benefits to provide, what activities to do. Because there's just so many questions and unknowns that they can often get stuck. In a couple of cases, they've been stuck, for a few weeks, in some cases a few months, one case a couple of years. And frankly, their friends were a little bit sick of hearing about this community that they were going to launch. and so I'm here to kind of give you some of the paths forward so you can kind of get unstuck and move on with things. Because deciding on pricing and packaging and stuff, there's tons of factors. So, what's the right price? How often should you charge? Do you need a trial? What benefits should I offer? Will it make enough money for you? The list goes on. And every community operator at the moment is kind of reinventing the wheel all over again when they're working through this. There aren't that many kind of resources in the space based on like real data, which kind of spell out what's typical to help you get started. And I find that's because community as a business is a relatively new thing. So communities have been around for millennia, but charging for communities really taken off in the kind of internet age over the last 20 years or so. There's a few examples I'll mention today who've been doing this for 50, 60, 70 years, but the vast majority is still kind of an emerging thing. And it means that unlike in other fields, even emerging ones, software as a service, for example, which over the last 20 years, a bunch of different approaches and pricing structures have emerged, like product-led or sales-led or usage-based pricing, value-based pricing, per user pricing. And the pros and cons of those are kind of well established and well known. It doesn't make it easy, but at least you know where to start. That doesn't really exist in the community space yet. And I was kind of frustrated by this. And so rather than just kind of trying to give my opinion and stuff, I wanted to kind of get a bunch of data. So I researched 135 different paid communities of practice, and I dug into their offerings. So 8 key traits in particular. So the size of the community, the price, the plan types, the primary selling points, offer elements and benefits, the proof points they were using, whether they had member requirements or not, and then the platform used. And through that research, 5 types of community emerged. So peer-to-peer, course, cohort, data, and exclusive. And that's what I'll be diving into today. So looking at the key elements of each and when it works best. It won't give you all of the answers, but it'll at least give you kind of a starting point, a bit of a framework to kind of guide some of your thinking. And importantly, this is, it's backed by data. It's not just my opinion. So first, I'll start by covering some findings about across the population of communities that I researched kind of as a whole, and then kind of get into those specific kind of types. And so for reference, the communities that I looked at range from 10 members to 120,000 members, and price varied from $1 a month through to $20,000 a month. The average across all of them was $414 a month, but that was kind of inflated by a few particularly kind of high-priced offerings. But the 90th percentile was $141 a month, and actually 2/3 of the plans were priced under $100. And the kind of distribution kind of looks like that. So the vast majority, they're kind of under that kind of $100 kind of threshold, and then there's very few kind of high-priced ones really push it up. For reference, if you charge $1,000 or more per month, that puts you in kind of the top 5% of communities by price. The average across some of the platforms like Mighty Networks, for example, is $48 a month. I'm not sure if kind of Mike has specific kind of figures for kind of what it is across Heartbeat. But the interesting thing to me was the kind of the different plan types that were on offer. So they actually were pretty evenly split, 50-50 between a single plan and multiple plans. So where they had tiered pricing, the vast majority of those, over 2/3, actually were just doing it purely from offering a discount based on longer commitments, so quarterly or annual subscriptions. So actually kind of just around 1/3 differentiated by non-time-based factors like the actual benefits. 1 in 5 had a lifetime plan option, and that was, as you'll see, is kind of more popular for certain community types than others. Actually, less than 10% offered a trial, either a free trial or one where you pay a nominal amount, like $1 a month or something. And often that's because of the limitation of the platform itself, rather than necessarily, I think, a desire to. But it meant that just 8% offered a freemium offering, so where the actual community or a part of the community is free to access, and then there's optional paid plans to unlock additional access or benefits. And so I think it's kind of underutilized as a model, but often people kind of worry about trying to upsell folks within a kind of community kind of setting. But the biggest kind of determinant of price that I found was who you're targeting as your primary kind of member, more so than any particular kind of community type. So for those running communities aimed at professionals, it's all about the learning and development budget rate. And so this varies by kind of org size. So range typically from $400 to $1,400. Averages around 1,000. And it actually doesn't increase that much for C-suite execs either. So 2/3 spend less than 4,000 per year per employee on the kind of exec training. 1,000 to 4,000 being the kind of the sweet spot that most pay. The big exception here is founders, especially in kind of SMBs, where there's kind of no formal cap. Essentially, the threshold you have to meet is, will this make me happier, healthier, more effective? And you see this gets borne out in how much communities actually charge for membership. So for those targeting ICs, they range from $500 to $900 a month. The average was 88, 90th percentile was $56 a month. Those targeting founders, however, range from $10 to $20,000 a month. The average was $965 a month. And that was kind of inflated by a kind of few high price ones. 90th percentile is $368 a month, which kind of gets us closer to what I think is typical. But it means that communities aimed at founders were priced 7x higher than those for ICs. And my takeaway here isn't that you should therefore just target founders. It's that you need to be kind of super clear about who your ideal member profile is, because they'll bring with it a bunch of limitations, in particular on price. And that's actually the biggest factor to kind of bear in mind when you're kind of thinking through the pricing for your offering, more so than any community type. I also want to kind of cover some thinking around what people are actually willing to pay for, or the types of problems that people are willing to use a community and pay for a community to solve. So if you boil all the different kind of community offerings and types down, they all had one of the following in the slide there. So growing a business, creative development, making money were the kind of the top three. Not necessarily kind of that surprising that they were top, because you can attach a monetary value to solving a problem in all three of those cases. But collectively, they accounted for over 50% of the kind of paid community types. All the popular ones were like group support, group learning. That was primarily problems which are kind of like still emerging, not necessarily kind of well understood. So therefore, they're not that well documented. There's not all the resources you can kind of Google and kind of find and use. And so that group setting kind of gives people to kind of dive in and learn and learn together and collectively. And of course, learning in general is kind of was a huge area on an individual kind of basis too. What was kind of interesting in the research is that things like achieving a specific outcome or accountability didn't actually factor in that often. So like accountability was an important element of many communities, but was rarely the actual the primary selling point. So it was often seen as like a supplementary kind of benefit than the focus.
And Gareth, would these be these points when you pulled them? Did they come from surveying the buyer, or was this surveying the community's offer structure, and you inferred from that? I'm just curious where the data, how you pulled it.
Yeah. So this was from the community's kind of offering, and then I would kind of discuss with the community operator, the person kind of running it, like what their kind of primary intent was with their community there. So yeah, it's all from the community operator perspective.
Very interesting.
The offer elements, so that the benefits that these communities are offering, typically they'll combine them. So like 4 benefits was the most common. That was the case in kind of about a quarter, but they ranged from between say 1 and up to 9 in some cases. interesting thing is that there was no correlation between the size of community or the price charged to members and the number of elements in the offer. And I think as community operators, we can often get sucked into thinking we should just keep adding more and more things. We kind of question the value of community alone, but the kind of research kind of didn't support that. So whilst it can be tempting to pack more things into the offer, I think it's actually better to find the right things that people are actually willing to pay for. And the most common benefits were, things like events, in particular, kind of workshops, facilitated calls, meetups, as well as kind of ask me anything sessions. The other popular thing was resources, so most commonly articles, but also things like templates, guides, as well as a range of more specialist offerings like tools, tutorials, playbooks. Where there was tiered pricing is most common to offer just a single big ticket benefit. But again, there's a range from between 2 and 7 additional kind of benefits beyond the community itself. And these mostly focus on things that kind of don't scale, so more personalized or small group activities, so like masterminds or cohort courses, in-person events, one-to-one group coaching sessions, audits, training as well. Or it could be things like data sets, discounts on tools, so offering discount codes across a collection of relevant tools for that membership, as well as kind of archive access and that kind of thing. And actually, if you want to kind of think through the types of activities and offerings that you should provide for your community, I compile like a big list essentially, just to kind of help you think through about know all the different types of offerings that people kind of put together. And so at that link there, bit.ly/community-offerings, you can kind of just see that graphic, so you don't have to rapidly take notes or anything. But whatever outcome you're selling, you need to provide proof points, and pretty much all of the communities surveyed had at least some proof points. Most combined multiple, so the most common was 3. Just 1 in 5 did 4 or 5 types of proof. The most common, so 70% of the time, it was testimonials. So getting members to share their experiences. Also, like photos or videos of members was a common one, as was numbers. So some kind of impressive stat showing your ability to deliver, or the size of the community, that kind of thing. Particularly in professional settings, logos of the organizations represented were common. Star ratings, member content. So like an example of a recent discussion, something that, a bit of an insight into what goes on within the community was another kind of thing there. But they kind of significantly vary by community type, as we'll kind of get onto. The other thing is, was less than 15% of the communities actually had some type of application process or member requirements. Most just let anyone willing to pay kind of join. Where there was an application process, actually the vast majority had no formal requirements. What they were often kind of really doing was kind of filtering for the right type of people to join, or they were kind of filtering out just a few types of people which didn't want to join. Most commonly things like vendors or consultants. They want to kind of avoid people coming in who might want to kind of sell to their membership, that kind of thing. Where there was member requirements, is often company based, so revenue, job roles, company size, that kind of thing. So the 5 types of community that I want to get into. The first is a course community. So here, the course community is one where the core value proposition is the course itself. And so while there might be a community component that's kind of supplementary to the offering, and was primarily is a space for the course participants to discuss their progress and ask questions, that kind of thing. And the reason for them was often because self-paced courses in particular have notoriously low completion rates, and so providing a community element can help maintain the motivation of members and keep accountable to their goals and that kind of thing. It's also beneficial for community operators because they can provide a useful source of recurring revenue. So if you don't have that, then the temptation can be get stuck into this kind of a hamster wheel of churning out new course content and new modules, that kind of thing, which can end up being kind of pretty spiky in terms of revenue kind of coming in. And so it can kind of offset some of that thing. They can be pretty tricky to run, as in the vast majority of the engagement happens when a member is taking part in the course. And it can be hard to maintain that engagement outside of it. But bringing alumni together afterwards, essentially kind of focus on a similar path together, can be a hugely kind of valuable thing. And in some cases, it ends up being kind of more valuable or considered more valuable than the actual kind of course content itself. In terms of the stats then, the size ranged from 200 to 12,000, which is one of the larger. Prices range from $16 to $166 a month. 95th percentile was $56 a month. Over half offered tiered pricing and a lifetime plan. The offer elements tended to focus around the course content and getting the most out of it. So it was resources like tutorials, templates, worksheets, where you can practice what you've learned in the course, as well as like events like live streams or group calls, where you can kind of discuss what you've learned and stay accountable with your kind of fellow participants. None of those community courses had application requirements, and 100% of them used testimonials as proof points. So that's kind of the key thing. So around half used kind of photos of members, some used starred ratings and numbers, but the big one was testimonials. And then primarily those using for learning skill, group learning, making money. Occasionally came up for like career development, accountability, but primarily is the kind of group learning aspect. Examples of popular ones that you might know of are like Copy Blogger Academy, Building a Second Brain, which is pictured there, or Take Off AI. And so in general, course communities are good for those who have a large audience, where you're looking to provide course content in a relatively hands-off way, typically go via video, but you want to kind of keep some aspect of kind of the human element in your course, which is kind of almost the opposite of a cohort community, which is the second type I want to kind of dive into. So they typically revolve around a group activity like a mastermind. And that activity might be a fixed length thing. So a gathering at a set time for several weeks or months to achieve a kind of particular kind of outcome. Or some of them are kind of ongoing. So they come together as a group with a common goal on a regular basis. There's no specific kind of endpoint. It's more about accountability or constantly kind of pushing the envelope and improving together. And the cohort is the main draw, but the resulting community can be really valuable. So like as you go through and add additional kind of cohorts of people, because they've all formed bonds during that cohort, they end up with some of the kind of the highest engagement rates that I kind of saw across the group studied. In terms of sizing, the cohort communities tended to be the smallest of all types kind of we looked at, but the price charge was significantly higher than a course community, for example. So the range from $165 to $2,000 a month. 90th percentile was $490 a month. So some 9x higher than a course community. 85% offered a single price, and half had a lifetime kind of plan. The benefits offered here were most commonly events with formats like hot seats, guest speakers, office hours being the most popular. Essentially, they're providing additional one-to-one help outside of the cohort itself. Mentorship audits were common too, presenting like an opportunity for the community operator to move more into consultancy. Co-working sessions, accountability calls were common as well, essentially providing kind of a way for the group to come together as well outside of the actual mastermind session. But growing a business was disproportionately the reason or the primary benefit of these kind of cohort-based communities. So around 2/3 actually were focused around kind of growing a business. Learning skill, creative development kind of came up a few times, but primarily business growth. 12% had an application process, but when used, they had no specific member requirements. So again, this is just mostly they had an interview session checking for member fit. So they're going to be spending several hours with this person as a group, and they want to make sure that that group dynamic is going to work. So examples are things like Ezra Firestone's e-commerce mastermind, David Perel's Rite of Passage, and ODF. And in summary, then I think kind of cohort communities are ideal for those with a small following. The relatively kind of high price points means you can quickly generate a livable income, but you do need to be a respected leader in the niche you're talking about, even if it's just kind of among a small group, to make it kind of feasible. Next up is a relatively niche thing, but is a very distinct type, which is data communities. And so these typically focused on business trends, trading tips, betting. They combine like access to an exclusive data set with a group of fellow practitioners, which can make for a kind of pretty valuable offering. So the main benefit here is that those folks are coming together, having the opportunity to chat about the strategies and results that they're achieving and trying to up their game and help each other kind of level up. And so some data communities bundle with it some educational resources to accelerate the learning that they would get, in particular for the kind of less experienced members. And these are far more scalable actually than cohorts or course communities. Essentially what they're doing is that they provide access to the data, and then the content is actually typically delivered by a live stream. So it means they can actually scale to pretty significant numbers. So, from 250 people up to 54,000 in some cases. Pricing was the middle of those of the offerings, so range between $500 and $300 a month. 95th percentile is $120 a month. None had entry requirements. The access to the data combined with the ability to kind of discuss it in that community setting was the kind of the core of the offering. But yeah, some offered additional educational aspect. So that would be things like explainers, frameworks, maybe group calls or live streams, where they would be doing the thing, betting, trading, whatever it is, people watching along and chatting about like what they were doing and why they were making certain decisions and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like live kind of education. The proof points used by these communities differed really significantly from the rest of the other community types. So quantitative results were paramount. 92% used numbers as the key proof point. And here it wasn't like membership size. It was all about detailing the performance of the outcomes that they're getting. Testimonials were used in kind of about 4/5 of those as well, and star ratings were used in 2/3. But almost all of them, like 92% of them, were about making money. So gambling or trading, some form of asset was the most common use case, but also identifying business trends was another popular one. Examples here are things like Microsoft's HQ, Trends Pro, High Strike. And so I think a data community is an interesting one if you've created some type of research or developed a technique that other people want to kind of get access to and know how to use. A lot of the operators in this space are doing the thing, so they're professional bettors or traders. They're making money that way, and then they're teaching folks on the side too as a way of providing supplementary kind of income. And often the benefit there is that it's stable income. It's like a recurring revenue. So often what they're doing has booms and busts associated with gambling and trading and things like that. And so this provides a kind of a constant income for them. So that's kind of the primary kind of benefit there. The most common community type is peer-to-peer community. And this is kind of a really kind of flexible option. You can kind of think of this as the default option. So if your community doesn't have a specialist need, so they don't require a course or a cohort, then peer-to-peer is probably the way to go. Because they're so flexible, the offering varied pretty dramatically. And ultimately, it's the combination of the offerings which kind of define the overall member experience. So somewhere like light touch accountability groups to keep folks working towards an outcome. Others were really complex offerings catering to multiple kind of different member types. And given the flexibility of this kind of type, we saw the kind of largest range of sizes, from small groups to like large international communities. And again, huge variance in prices. Some were $1 a month right through to $10,000 a month. And the average lowest price point for entry was $49. And the highest price point with a multiple tier setup was $108 a month. Events and resources were kind of the most common offering, but discounts on kind of software in particular were kind of popular too. Courses or programs were offered in around a fifth of them, but unlike in a course or cohort community, specifically this was offered as like a supplementary kind of benefit. And ultimately that's kind of like the strength of the peer-to-peer format. So you can layer in different offerings like, you know, group or one-to-one coaching, accountability calls, member matching, and create different plans that cater to specific needs that your members have. And the benefits of the higher level plans were offering personalized offerings. So events were most common, but formats like in-person meetups, Ask Me Anything sessions, sprints, or masterminds. And the resources was offering things like access to an archive of content, or kind of courses were offered in kind of a third of them. Examples here are things like Generalist World, Exit 5, Small Bets. And so peer-to-peer, the community type is a solid choice for those with a large potential market of people with a range of needs, and when your members don't have this kind of a specialist requirement. Or indeed, if you're just kind of like keen to get started and you just want to kind of get an offering out there and learn from feedback as to whether you need to specialize, then it's kind of a great starting point from which you can kind of iterate and move in a kind of particular kind of direction. And finally, of the 5 types, the exclusive community is one that I think which people are most drawn to or have kind of most interest in. Essentially, is kind of a specialist type of the peer-to-peer community, where who is in the community is almost as important as what the community is about. There's kind of 2 main types. So a vicinity community where you pay to get greater access to the person running it, or an exclusive membership where they're selling access to an elite group of members. They're often picky about who can join, but they retain the flexibility of a peer-to-peer community. And so the structure of exclusive communities was broad, and they bring together members in a variety of ways. But what was most surprising to me is that they're pretty scalable. So especially the ones where you're selling access to a group of members rather than an individual. Exclusive doesn't have to mean small. So many of the ones with access to a group of people had a decentralized structure. So they would have a local chapter model, organizing in-person meetups and core gatherings in small groups. But the average price was significantly above kind of everything else we've looked at so far. Prices range from $50 a month up to $20,000 a month. The average price was pushed up by kind of a few high-priced offerings, but the 95th percentile was still $974 a month. None offered a lifetime plan, and all had some type of member gating or application process. Indeed, I think that's kind of like the defining aspect of an exclusive community is this the membership requirements. In terms of the offerings that they provided, events were king, essentially. So 100% offered events, often in multiple different formats. So expert guest workshops, in-person meetups, small group calls were most common. 70% also offered resources, mainly content or tools, as well as like databases. So like databases of vendors or contractors, templates, that kind of thing. They still offered discounts, so on services and software, and also coaching calls. Uniquely to this kind of group, a concierge or member experience manager is also a common benefit offered. really kind of doubling down, I think, on the kind of exclusive kind of feel, like a high-end hotel, kind of almost. And the emphasis of the benefits in these groups were less on education. Most of the target folks are already considered to be at the top of their field. So they're more about getting the right people together so that they can collectively stay on the cutting edge. The proof points here were used more subtly. So few used flashy things like numbers or star ratings. Instead, the emphasis was testimonials, photos, videos of members, and logos in particular. Primary selling points were often business related. So business growth, career development were the most kind of common. Examples are things like Sampar's Hampton, J. Klaus's The Lab, or Geisha Haas's Dreamers and Doers. The high prices can make exclusive communities almost look like a no-brainer, but they're really hard to launch. So a few of the long established exclusive communities have standalone brands. So things like World 50 or Vistage or Young Presidents Organization. But most are closely tied to a particularly well-known charismatic founder. So things like Joe Polish's Genius Network, Russell Brunson's Inner Circle, folks like that. And so you need a ton of credibility to offer such an option. And they typically have quite high operating costs too. So a lot of the exclusive communities, due to their kind of high touch nature, in some cases employ hundreds of staff, and their reliance on in-person events means they often have pretty significant venue costs as well. But they're an intriguing option if you have an extensive network of leaders kind of in your field, and you're credibly seen as the connector of them. You don't have to be the best in the field. You just have to have the kind of the network, and people you have to have kind of sufficient success that people will trust you as the person to kind of get this group together. And so to recap, the 5 types: course communities, good for large followings when you want to scale an offering, but keep that human touch. The cohorts are good for those with a smaller following, but with established credibility, at least within a small group. Data communities are great if you have a specialist expertise, in particular in making money in some way, and then that's one for you. Exclusive is an interesting option if you're well connected and respected in your particular kind of field. Otherwise, peer-to-peer is kind of the way to go. But some takeaways in general was that, yeah, there's no correlation between the size of community and the price charge and the number of elements. So don't stretch yourself too thin, trying to do too much. The value of benefits was pretty subjective. So one community could charge $20 a month for the exact same benefits used by another community which is charging $2,000 a month. The difference is who you're selling to and what that benefit means to them. So think through exactly who your kind of ideal community member is and what their needs are, and also the limitations that kind of brings in terms of what they're willing and able to pay. To maximize revenue, it's important to not forget kind of impersonal, personalized offerings. They provide the opportunity for you to upsell and charge higher rates. And it's also, I think, important to not just kind of default to charging monthly. So consider the different cadences that may be a better fit for the value you create and the time frame in which members see results. So if folks can pay monthly but don't see them benefit for several months, then that's often a recipe for high churn. So consider like an annual only option in that case. And overall, I think you should use these kind of community types as a way to think through what's the right approach for you. So don't overthink it. You can always change things later. Like Small Bets, for example, started off as a cohort and is now a peer-to-peer community because that's what they found unlocked most value for their members and what worked for them. So you're not locked into any one approach. It's just an interesting starting point from which you can learn from members, get feedback, and kind of iterate. But hopefully this kind of gives you some ideas of where to start. And then, yeah, if you want to learn from some real life kind of examples, some of which I kind of mentioned here, then yeah, check out the newsletter. that do kind of deep dives into the community. So like how it was founded, what how it runs day to day, what the benefits are, price points, that kind of thing. So there's some interesting things there. And then yeah, check out the list of activities to kind of think through that aspect as well. So that's bit.ly/community-offerings. But thanks very much. Let me know if you have any questions.
That was fantastic. I did, by the way, guys, share in the chat the bit.ly link and the community.inc link, just so they're I'm going to make sure they're clickable. I'm going to send it through again. Looks like one of them wasn't hyperlinked, but that's okay. We'll get this done for you. Awesome. We do now have our Q&A section here. So if you guys have been holding back, you can always drop them in the chat, but I'm going to go through them in order. I've been paying close attention. I do want to say I have personally found the amount of data and the depth of analysis here very refreshing, because there's a lot of hand waving that is often done about advice in the sector, especially early stage entrepreneurs or maybe new people new to business are given, broad advice that sounds applicable. But I think to be able to drill in and see what the trends are actually showing and what are the outliers, what are the norms, that by type, very impactful, Gareth. So thank you. That was my takeaway, something that I find really helpful here. So if I run down the questions here, it looks like we have several. So question one from Jacqueline: where do personal growth or transformation communities land in terms of pricing? And there was kind of an add-on here. Would love examples if you know of any profitable communities in that industry. There's so many about business and making money. Do you have any examples that come to mind, and generally where do they fall in terms of pricing?
Yeah, so the pricing for those was actually on the lower end. From memory, I think is around $45 to $50 a month on average. The formats of them was almost entirely kind of like a peer-to-peer community, so they had kind of pretty broad range of offerings. But yeah, it certainly kind of was edging towards the kind of the lower end. And actually, I guess that kind of is reflected in the kind of the interest of like achieving kind of specific kind of outcomes was actually relatively kind of underserved in the population that I kind of looked at, which is I find personally like a little bit kind of counterintuitive. Often, transformation communities are lauded as like the way to kind of approach it. But yeah, it just wasn't reflected in the data that we kind of looked at. But I think that's could be because a lot of the groups we're looking at were like community of practice. I think maybe you get more of those in some kind of other kind of sectors.
Okay, interesting. Interesting to find that. Also, there was a question related from Jen who said, do you see hybrid models often? For example, exclusive and cohort, or things that kind of blend the different categories that you shared for us. It almost seems like cohort could grow into exclusive. For example, Jen coaches CEOs. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. So although like I've tried to pull out these types of communities as distinct things, that's as a tool to kind of help people kind of think through what would be an appropriate thing for them. But for sure, they really kind of start to kind of blur the lines, and combining things like kind of cohort with exclusive was kind of pretty common. And actually, you see that as a way of as an opportunity to upsell or to kind of maximize kind of revenue. So a lot of the exclusive communities would have a relatively kind of high price kind of entry point, and then would offer a bunch of kind of different one-off events or event activities in addition to where they were kind of charging additional fees. That's very, very, very common occurrence.
Interesting. Okay. This piggybacks a little bit, kind of sort of, the questions are all just wonderfully related. So from Rich, you mentioned exclusive communities. What about by invitation only, like the model that the Clubhouse platform created so much hype and huge overnight success with over 1 million members popping on right away?
Yeah. So I didn't actually see any which claimed to be by invitation only, as in like almost all of the ones here you could freely apply. But obviously then they would have their own often kind of undisclosed process for how they judge whether you can could be become a community member or not. As I think I mentioned that it was most common, so in over 3/4 of the tenants to not have any kind of formal requirements, and so they wouldn't kind of really give you any real insight into kind of how you're being judged as to whether you could become a member or not. But yeah, anyone could technically have applied for pretty much all of them.
So free open to all application, selective, sometimes opaquely selective with those who are allowed the privilege of subscribing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So an example is like Hampton, for example. They claim like a 7% acceptance rate. They in their case they do actually have some specific like earning requirements and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's pretty rare for people to actually kind of publish it.
Interesting. Okay. Angel in the group in the chat here said, "What are the best ways to conduct customer discovery with existing and prospective new members to understand what they value most beyond just the traditional polls, surveys, interviews? Do you have any other tactics than those?"
Yeah. I think in particular for kind of nailing down what are the benefits and kind of price points, landing page tests kind of work kind of really well. So you're literally looking at like conversion rates or kind of click-through rates for setting up a bunch of different landing page with a combination of different set of a combination of offers and price points. And that way you then can start to get some kind of quantitative data to kind of inform your thinking. So yeah, you can do this through a lot of A/B testing kind of software, where different members will be presented with different looking pages, and then you can kind of see and judge the outcomes of them. I think that is one of the kind of the most reliable ways of actually getting some of the information, because in the other ones where you're kind of surveying or you're talking to members face to face, they often tell you what they think you want to hear. Like most people are actually really nice and want to get along well, and so yeah, you'll find a kind of pretty large disparity between what people tell you and then what the results are. And so some of these kind of more quantitative methods I think are useful in kind of getting around the niceness of people actually into kind of what people will actually do when it comes to kind of clicking and putting in credit card numbers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and as a marketer, I agree with that, just because I find that subjective feedback is oftentimes highly colored, right, by a variety of factors, whether it's etiquette, perception of not wanting to hurt people, or whatever external factors drive it. So yeah, a landing page data split is a great strategy too. Let's see, we've got 4 more questions. I want to make sure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gareth. Finish your thought there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, if you one of the limitations of the landing page thing is that you already have some type of audience and already have amount of traffic. In which case, if you don't have that, then doing things like Google Ads testing is useful. Right. Often you can find free discount codes to kind of give you a budget that you can use. And so if you don't have kind of cash to really kind of push into this, then you can often kind of find these a limited amount of kind of Google Ads tokens to do a similar kind of thing as well. So that's another kind of approach.
No, it's very helpful, especially if you're early stage, right, and you're bootstrapping.
Right.
Very good.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, we've got 4 more questions. I want to make sure we get through them and then give you the chance to wrap up, and me as well for that promo we wanted to share from our end. Holly said, could you please repeat the range and 95th percentile monthly membership fees for peer-to-peer and course memberships? I have a feeling, based on the audience we've got tuned in live, those are probably the most popular categories, but I'd love to just to make sure we could bring those numbers back around.
Yeah. So yeah. So the complete range for peer-to-peer communities was between $1 and $10,000. The average most had a tiered pricing. So the average lowest price point for entry was $49 a month. That's the 90th percentile. and the highest plan average was $108 a month. That's again the 90th percentile.
Okay.
The other one was it Cohort?
Course, peer-to-peer and course.
Course. Course, though, the full range was from $16 to $166 per month. 95th percentile there was $56 per month.
Okay, those are the numbers. Holly, there you are. From Bianca, we have a question requiring a little context about what about communities that are also a hybrid referral network? In her specific case, she's got a community for faith-driven women in real estate. The purpose is to have access to referrals, but in addition, training, co-working, prayer, things associated with that other factor of the niche. So Bianca just doesn't really know where to price that at right now. Where would that land in your experience?
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand the model there. So it's
a hybrid of business and spirituality, it looks like, based on the niche as it's described. And Bianca, if you did want to drop more info in the chat, you always could. But yeah, it looks like we have two different value props and the intersectionality of them.
Yeah, it's interesting because the actual kind of the referral aspect I kind of see as being a little separate from the actual that isn't to do with what you're kind of delivering in terms of the value. That's just kind of like one one kind of aspect. So I don't see them as being a different type. It would depend on like how you're kind of delivering the offering and the core of the content relative to the method you're using to kind of get members kind of in the door. So I think it still is applicable. If there's some kind of additional context there, then feel free to kind of DM me on LinkedIn or something, and I'm happy to kind of follow up.
Okay. If you have a link, Gareth, you want to do to your LinkedIn profile, we can put that in the chat. Make sure folks here have the chance to see it. This way they can reach out to you. I am loving the great questions we have coming in, folks. We've got 6 minutes left, and I would love to get everybody out of here on time. I'm going to try to make these a little bit more rapid fire, Gareth, if I can. Not to time pressure you, sure. But just if we can get through the last 3 I got in here. So Angels asked, what insights can you share about virtual versus in-person? Just kind of a quick hot take on virtual versus in-person community models.
Yeah. So wherever there was in-person aspects, there was a considerable opportunity to charge more. I think the value that people place on those in-person connections was considerably kind of higher.
It was quite large.
I don't have the specific kind of figures to hand, but there was like several multiples higher you could charge when there's an in-person kind of component.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And then the last 2 questions are also related to pricing. So Rich says, you mentioned monthly could be a challenge for some, depending on when the transformation or when the promise is felt by the customer. Ed suggested annual. What are your thoughts about lifetime memberships? And then piggybacking on that, Angel also added, what about month-to-month payments or annual all up front? For example, X a month versus Y a year, and there could be a discount for paying all up front. Is there a general trend when it comes to longer periods, higher tickets, or things like that?
Yeah. So it very much kind of depends on the value that you're kind of delivering, and the time frame over which it kind of takes members to realize that kind of the benefits kind of it, as to whether it's kind of the kind of appropriate kind of way. So, for example, a lot of kind of cohorts where they were had a relatively short life for the cohort itself. So you're offering a large amount of value in a small amount of time. There was a large number of lifetime plans kind of offered there. There's also a large number of lifetime plans offered associated with courses, because typically you're used to paying a single figure for a course, and although they then added a community aspect which could potentially be kind of long-lived, just I think due to the overwhelming commonality of paying a single price, we saw kind of lifetime plans kind of offered more there. The point about annual versus monthly is just if you're offering things like transformation, then that takes typically, several months, a year, maybe more, to actually kind of achieve that. And so whenever you provide the opportunity for people to churn, they will. If it's you're charging monthly, they'll consider the value of what you're offering on that month by month basis. If you do it on an annual basis, then the opportunity to churn is much less, and the opportunity to provide benefit and transformation is longer. And so the advice there is to match the value that you deliver with the cadence in which you charge for it. So don't shoot yourself in the foot by offering monthly when you're not going to deliver benefit over until several months, a year plus, because folks will churn out.
Yeah, I've grappled that in my own community. I was promoted from customer to team member, right? Is my journey in Heartbeat. And my community, I started out with a monthly, membership like everybody else, and I went through an experimental stint of doing just annual only because, folks were getting the majority out of what my offer was after 3 months, and so I wanted to make sure that they were there long enough. We also Heartbeat does also offer quarterly offers structures as well, so you can match that as to the promise that you're offering. Nice. Great questions that have all come in from everybody tuned in live from LinkedIn and YouTube and in the studio audience who have joined from the Hearth. Thank you guys for all these great questions. There are a few we didn't get to, no doubt, but Gareth did put his LinkedIn profile in the chat. I repeated it so that you guys can grab that there. Gareth, any parting thoughts before I share our promotional gift on the Heartbeat end?
No, loved it. Great questions. I appreciate everyone's time. And feel free to DM me if you have any follow-up questions.
Wonderful. And then to share for the group, I just want to let everybody know that as a thank you for attending this session, as if learning all of this amazing data and trends of how to price your community wasn't valuable enough, if you're on the fence and you're thinking about starting with Heartbeat and you are weighing a community platform, we want to make that barrier to entry just a little bit lower. So what we have here as a thank you for attending is 50% off your first 3 months of growth or starter tier. This is valid for just the next 2 days. So that means it expires at midnight on Friday, Eastern time. But if you hit heartbeat.chat/Gareth and you do spin up a trial, you will notice that the promotion is in there for you. And of course, all the fundamental features across all the different types of communities that Gareth talked about today are available through Heartbeat. Everything from cohort models, course-based learning, peer-to-peer, exclusive, even data communities, if you have the data to be able to build that up, can be built in Heartbeat. And we have a variety of flexible payment structures, so you can bundle and create different payment terms and structures that suit what the promise that you're providing is and what your customers are able and willing to pay. So yes, that's heartbeat.chat/Gareth. We'll put that in the chat as well. I'm going to stop this share. And then guys, as we finish up the stream here, I would love to see in the chat, what is the one takeaway, the one thing you are most excited about having learned in this session? I know for me, just the depth of data, the validation of, what real pricing numbers are out there was super helpful to me. We all sometimes question the things we are making and building in this world. So being able to have that is very helpful. We have folks who are we have thanks pouring in the chat. We have thank you. Very interesting. Thank you. If you guys had any particular topic that you would love, you can always drop that right in there. The insights, people just seem to really love the insights. So thank you guys so much for attending. Gareth, thank you for bringing this expertise, clearly well-researched and well-prepared. We really appreciate that for you. I'm going to drop in the chat here, heartbeat.chat/Gareth. If you guys did want to take advantage of that, grab that link. Achieving outcomes was actually low on importance from Holly. That, I think, was something interesting to me as well. I'll pop that one up on the screen for folks to see. That was an amazing insight, unexpected but valuable. So, all right. So thank you guys all for attending this Heartbeat tutorial. We do run these almost every week. If you are not a member of the Hearth, that is a free-to-join community for community builders on Heartbeat. Even if you're not yet started there, come on in, and that's a peer-to-peer community, since we know what that model is now, and get you guys, get expertise shared between over 3,000 community builders, a wonderful think tank for ideas, and catch additional events just like this on our event calendar. So thank you guys so much. We're going to close down our live stream now. Gareth, I will speak to you backstage once we shut this off. But thank you guys so much for attending. Take care. And we are backstage. There we are. And excellent. Great.